Hey guys, I'm your host Andrew King, and we are here today wrapping up our brewery tour. You may not have seen her on camera, but this is Abby Armbruster. She's been behind the camera in every one of our stops so far. So we're gonna go over a little bit of what we learned, what we tasted, things like that from our brewery adventure.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was really great to be able to see what each brewery does differently and how they all approach beer in a different way, even though we're all here in Columbus, but yet every single one has a specialty.
They all like beer.
Yeah, that's the one thing they all have in common. They love the beer. And I guess let's start from the very beginning. Sure. With Combustion and Pickerington. Mm-hmm. Such a cool space and such a large space.
Yeah.
Probably one of the bigger patios and bigger inside for the brewery.
Yeah, it was a cool way to start off because it was one, like a few of them that I visited that I hadn't visited before, that I didn't really know much about, and that I was kind of pleasantly surprised by.
Yeah.
They've got a really cool space, like you said,
mm-hmm.
and that was definitely a through line for this whole thing, is these cool spaces that these guys come up with, because there's a lot of really interesting buildings, a lot of really interesting architecture and uses of their spaces and stuff like that, and
mm-hmm.
that was definitely one of the cooler ones, just visually and space-wise.
Yeah, and the history of these buildings, I mean, in the case of Combustion, it used to be like a dairy farm distributor or something like that.
Lines, yeah.
And then multiple ones used to be car dealerships.
Yeah, apparently every brewery used to be a car dealership.
So I guess it just makes obvious good space for brewing. I don't know why, but
yeah, I think it's like the high ceilings and the big spaces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Open layouts, if you will.
Yeah, it's easy to just move in.
Yeah,
and start.
I don't know. It works for him.
Yes, and Keith, the owner at Combustion, was a great teacher for us, especially off camera. He taught us a lot about the different types of beers, what it takes to make it, the different kinds. So
talking to him ended up helping us come up with questions for the rest of the tour, because we were still early in the process at that point.
Yeah, and then for the second week we went to Sideswipe Brewing, which was really cool because they use Craig, the owner there. They use his background of MMA training, fighting, as their inspiration for the names.
It was cool to have a place that had like a real brand that really had like a theme to most of what they do.
Yeah.
Which I think helped them with the problem that we discovered with other places where they hate naming their beer.
Yes.
They could just come up with some fighting related thing.
Right, a fighting term is a great name for a beer. Yeah.
So I think that works out really well for them. I also liked that place, the combination between the first and second locations was really like a big contrast. We went from like a brewery that's sort of in the suburbs, like entrenched in the middle of the community, to like this like old industrial park where they opened a brewery, and it works for them too. So I think that was a good example of how it's sort of different for everybody, but you can make it work regardless of your situation.
Yeah, and they said at Sideswipe that a lot of people will come there waiting for the traffic on 270 to end.
Sure.
And so they'll just drink a beer and then they'll be able to go.
I think we can all empathize with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we went to Seven Sun, which was probably one of the more popular places that already had a pretty well-known fan base before we went there.
The memorable thing from that was that their new rooftop patio is on
their expansion. Yeah. And I don't think it's officially open yet, right?
I don't think so, but soon. I think they're shooting for the summer.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to go back there when it's finally open, because that's going to be a gorgeous space.
It's going to be a really popular spot.
And if you like, and if you like food trucks, that's somewhere where you can get a different food truck every night. So that's pretty cool too. And then Wolf's Ridge, that was really awesome because you have the restaurant in the front, the brewery in the back, 2 separate entrances, 2 different menus. And even though they're all in the same building, they're 2 completely different markets and spaces.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see one that like emphasizes their food just as much as their beer, which I think is cool. And not all of them do that. Like you mentioned, Seven Sun has food trucks. Some of them have just like standard bar food. But they really have like this real emphasis on their restaurant experience, which is cool, and not something that you could say about a lot of other breweries, at least around here. Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one thing that really blew me away about Wolf's Ridge is their distillery, their barrels that they had underneath in the basement, which you feel like it's only 5 or 6 feet tall, and then they have these huge barrels that used to be for Merlot wine or different kinds of wine or distillery spirits, and so seeing them use that for some of their sour beers is really cool.
Yeah, another really cool space. Just like a really cool facility they've got there for sure.
Yeah, and then after that we went to North High, which is where we made our own beer. We didn't make the beer the first week, but yeah, in case you didn't see it, we have our off the record and Thirst Amendment beers. So that was definitely a unique experience.
I like that. I feel like North High is one of the more like traditional ones. You know, like when someone says like we're going to a brewery, I feel like that's what you picture as like that. Like, you know, in the popular area, like the Shore North.
Right.
Separate space in the back to brew the beer, and then it just looks like a bar in the front. I can appreciate that approach for sure.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think this is probably the only place where you can make your own beer.
Yeah, that's definitely really cool. I'm not sure, positive it's the only one, but I don't know if any others. So that's definitely a cool thing that they do.
Right,
because it's hard to learn as much as we've learned. In like you know, just a few minutes sitting at a bar.
Right.
So it's a cool experience to be able to watch it from start to finish.
Yes, absolutely. And then we did go to Ill Manor Brewing in Powell, and that was really cool because, I mean, Powell, I feel like, has really been kind of up and coming, and then Ill Manor, we know, is upcoming because they are building a brand new space right next door. Good
example of the community like really embracing the brewery thing.
Absolutely.
Because they're getting plenty of support from the community. It seems like people are willing to drive from their jobs in the city back to Powell and then drink there as opposed to staying in the city, which I think is probably a big thing for them to overcome.
Totally. Yeah.
And it was cool to see them like actively growing like while we're there.
Yeah.
So it'll be cool to see them again when their new space is open in a year or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like pretty aggressively they were going to be able to build and open up very quickly, so that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then we went to Four String, which you went to and I actually did not, but Four String, you'll have to tell me about that space.
Four String is cool. It's another one of those sort of like old industrial spaces. From the outside, it looks like they make cans there or something. But then you walk in and they've got this big open hall for their tap room. And they've got like pinball and like community tables and stuff like that.
That's cool.
It's a really cool space. They've got a bunch of TVs, and they have since they distribute a lot more than some of the littler ones that we saw.
Yeah.
Which you know because you've seen Four String beers all over the place.
Right.
They have like a huge production facility in there, and that was really cool to see. Just because it's a much larger magnitude than a lot of the other ones we've seen.
Yeah.
Closer to something like, you know, Great Lakes than a lot of the smaller you know, tap rooms and brew pubs that we've been to. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. And then the week after that, neither of us were there, but that's when we bottled the beer, and so we have to say thanks to Tom, Lisa, and Sarah for helping out with that because
our crew took over and did the dirty work for us.
They did the manual labor.
The talent can't be expected to be part of the work. You know?
Yeah, what do you want us to fill bottles? Come on. So thank you to all of our staff members who helped with that. But then we were back for Grove City Brewing Company, which was perfect for a couple days before St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
We got the green beer.
That green beer with the pistachio butter is one of the more memorable things I think I experienced. Just such an interesting taste and color and everything.
I had no idea you could even make pistachio butter, and then to be able to use that for a natural green color is mind-blowing.
I really appreciate just those guys are swinging hard, you know? Like they're really trying stuff. They've got a craft wine place attached, which is weird and cool. So I appreciate what those guys are doing in like trying some new stuff, getting some radical looking and tasting beers. And you know, and doing it in a small community that hasn't, like, you wouldn't think of Grove City as a beer destination. So that's always cool.
Yeah, and they definitely are doing well over there. And then Lineage Brewing, talking about experimental, we tried the elderberry, which was kind of a purple beer, which was really, really good. Yeah. And even though it was purple, it wasn't overwhelmingly fruity or anything like that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've been a Lineage fan since long before we started the podcast, or the show, so that was a welcome trip for me, and I know one that our colleague Tom really loved because he lives around there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lineage is doing well in that part of town for sure.
Yeah, and then of course we followed it up with Uptown Deli and Brew in Westerville, which was awesome because that's another neighborhood that you don't necessarily think of brewery. Right. But they're trying to change that at Uptown.
Yeah, their whole embracing of the dry city is very cool.
Yeah.
Their Prohibition era painting, or not painting, pictures and art and stuff like
that
is very cool. Mug shots, yes.
Yeah.
They've got a cool brand, and they're doing a good job of reaching that Westerville market that hasn't had a lot of alcohol related options for a long time. So it's cool to see them as sort of a next step in that community, getting over its whole Prohibition thing.
Absolutely. And even though our week-to-week brewery tour is ending, we are still going to be stopping by maybe once a month or once every 2 months to different places. So we still want your suggestions of where we should be going. I know we want to go to some places a little further out, like Buckeye Lake, or maybe some places in Zanesville or Granville or Or Lancaster, yeah. So we'll definitely be looking for your suggestions. And before we do those places, you can also take a listen to our new podcast that'll be launching very soon. We will have a whole beer-specific episode where you can hear Andrew talk more about beer.
I like to talk about beer.
Yes. So it is definitely not over, and we will definitely continue to talk about beer more so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Andrew, any other last thoughts?
No, thanks for tuning in and watching me drink some beers for a few months.
Yeah, it was very fun for us, and we hope that you enjoyed it as well. So until the next video, we'll see you then.